Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Daniel. I talk about Essendon. Today we're going to talk about Archie Perkins and what his role is going to be going into 2026. He's one of the most talked about players on our list. So it's going to be a fascinating discussion talking about Perkins. He does divide a lot of people. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he was picked up at such a high pick. Initially in 2020, that famous 2020 draft where we picked up Zach Reed, Nick Cox, and of course Archie Perkins. He's currently 23 years old. He was picked up at pick 9 in that 2020 draft. He's 188 centimetres and he's out of contract in 2026. So why does Archie Perkins divide so many people? Why is he such a talked about player? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with that high investment in him. I think if he was picked up at pick 55 or something, I think most people would be looking at him and be reasonably content with his career. He's played 101 games, kicked 65 goals. I think he kind of averages a goal a game when he goes forward. So that's a little bit misleading. I think when he actually plays forward, he does tend to sort of chip in and get that goal a match. But he has kicked 60 odd goals in his 101 games. So what is it about Perkins? My frustration with him is that I look at him and there's most things physically he can do. You look at him and you think, oh yeah, he's a pretty reasonable kick. It's not a weakness of his game. And I'm talking about the technical aspect of his kicking, not decision making or anything, just technically. You think, oh yeah, he's a pretty good kick. At 188 centimetres, he's a pretty good overhead mark, right? He can mark the ball. He's reasonable at ground level. He's not slow necessarily. He's got most of the physical traits. And you can see why, for example, that in his draft year, why he perhaps rated so highly. He thought there's not anything obvious that he sort of can't do, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to come together. The planets don't seem to align, if you like, where it all just comes together in one nice little package. And it's hard to point a finger at exactly what it is that is not letting him reach his potential. I suspect if he was playing in a really good team, that would help. And I'm hoping in the future, if we can become a good team, that would benefit him. I mean, some players can play well in poor teams, and some players benefit hugely from being in a good team. I think Perkins is in the latter. I think he would actually benefit if we become a good team. So I'm really keen to see us become a good team, not just because I want to see us become a good team, as we all do, but I want to see how Perkins goes, because he is out of contract this year. There is a lot of talk, and you see this in all the, not just on my YouTube page, but all the others. If you read the comments, everyone's after, trade this player, trade that player. And I mentioned this in a previous video. Trades are not common. They don't happen. We didn't get rid of anyone via trade this year just passed. We got Braden Fiorini in, but we didn't actually trade anyone, right? No one actually left the club via a trade. For a trade to happen, the player has to want to agree to it. The club has to want to get rid of him, and another club has to want the player. So trades are pretty rare, okay? And Perkins, whilst I understand the frustration that he hasn't kind of reached his potential, he is not, he's not a player he's not the 40th best player on our list. Like, he's probably, you could make an argument he's not in the best 23. I think he is just. I think he's probably around that, 15 to 20 range in terms of quality on our list, something around there. Maybe a little bit into the teens or low 20s, you could argue. But he's not at the point that he's going to get delisted or anything like that. I mean, to get delisted, you have to be, the 40th best player or around that. So he's better than that. And I'm just hoping one of these days it can all come together, because he's got quite a lot of strengths, and we'll go into them in a minute. We'll just have a quick look at his output last year. So he averaged 14 disposals a game, 5 contested disposals, 1.4 clearances, 2.8 marks, and 2.3 tackles. And already you can just see there from the numbers, they're not terrible numbers, but for whatever reason, they're not elite. There's not one aspect of the game he's elite at. Okay? He's okay. He's kind of okay at everything. I've mentioned before that I think sometimes he would be suited to a more stable role, when the ball's in the middle of the ground and he's got to make the decision to transition from offense to defense when the team wins or loses the ball. I think that can sometimes throw him out a bit. I think he would benefit from playing a more specialised position, perhaps in the forward line, where maybe his possession numbers would go down a little bit, but he would have a more clearly defined role. I think that would help him, because you look at the numbers he puts up and there's nothing that stands out and says, he's elite at this or he's elite at that, but he's kind of okay at everything. And I don't know if you guys notice this, but most games he plays, there'll be something good he does that you kind of remember, and that's kind of what you think, oh yeah, I can see why he's in the team now. So he won't do much, but then he'll take a nice mark, a nice contested mark, or he'll chip in and kick a nice goal, and then won't do a lot else for the rest of the game. And you can sort of see it, and he always just flashes in. He flashes in and out of the game and does something nice. So he's got the ability. We know that. He's just got to put it all together in a consistent package. Because if you look at some of his strengths, he's pretty explosive in terms of his power. You can see him shrug off tackles when he gets in the ball, when he's in a contested situation. He's got pretty good acceleration. He's pretty agile. He's generally a good athlete. I think breaking out of, congestion is one of his strengths. I think he does tend to have scoreboard impact when he goes forward. He doesn't always spend time forward. He's fluctuated between that high half forward role and a bit of a midfielder. He even spent a little bit of time. He spent a game in the reserves last year, late in the year, which was not a good sign with all the injuries he had. We had getting dropped to the reserves. But he does tend to chip in and is able to score. And I think he seems more natural as a forward. To me, that's kind of where he should land. We'll get to that in a minute. He's reasonably clean with his ball use, his technique, like his kicking technique and all the fundamentals seem okay, but just for whatever reason, it's just not put together in a package. He seems pretty competitive and all that sort of stuff. But the biggest issue is really his consistency, both within games and across seasons. He hasn't really had a breakout year, but he's been reasonably consistently inconsistent at roughly the same level for most of the last couple of years. He hasn't. I don't think he's really improved or declined. So consistently inconsistent is kind of how I would look at it. It looked like he was trending towards maybe a second or third midfielder for a while. There was a game to open the season against Hawthorn a few years ago where he played a bit in the midfield and had a really good game. We thought he was going to develop into a bit of a midfield player. That hasn't really happened. He tends to get limited midfield volume. His disposals per game, he struggles to get involved in games. Some players just are able to involve themselves in the game just because they're natural footballers, whether you like them or not. Someone like a Darcy Parish, for all his faults, he's kind of like a natural footballer, right? He will able to get his 30 possessions. He gets involved in the game. You can debate all the the worth of his possessions, but he doesn't necessarily go missing. Perkins does tend to go missing. His defensive work rate, it's not necessarily a huge weakness, but he averages 2.3 tackles a game. I'd like to see him up that a little bit and become a really good pressure forward. Just his role in the team as well. What role does he have at Essendon? Is he going to be a high half forward? Is he going to be a player that goes into the midfield? My personal belief is that he is suited as kind of that medium forward, because I think he has the traits of a pretty good forward line player. That way he can play a more settled role if he plays in the forward line. He can work on his defensive game and be a good pressure forward. He can use his natural attacking instincts. He loves kicking a goal, all that sort of stuff. And I think as a medium-sized forward, maybe perhaps at some stage replacing the kind of role that Guelphy has had in the team, I kind of see that as being more the role where he will land, and it seems to be the kind of role he enjoys playing more. What would we expect out of him in 2026? Well, I'd like this to be a breakout year for him, because it's time. And from all reports, he does seem to be having a pretty good off-season, pre-season. He looks pretty good. I'd like to see him average up into the high teens in terms of his possession output. Now, obviously, that is contingent on where he plays. Obviously, if he were to play as a permanent forward, that would be decreased. If he was to play and I'm assuming, when I say that, I'm assuming he's playing the role that he's been playing. If he plays the role that he's been playing, I think averaging about a goal a game, he's never averaged a goal a game before. If he averages a goal a game and averaged 18 possessions a game, that would be a win, and that would be worthy, I think, of where he got picked up in the draft. That's a good return. 17, 18 possessions and a goal a game. If he was to go play a permanent forward, I'd be happy with 12 to 14 possessions a game and maybe 1.5 goals a game. So perhaps 30 goals. That would be a good return. So contract-wise, it's going to be really interesting what happens here with Perkins, because he'll stay on the list, I think. I mean, look, unless there was some other club offered a trade and they came to some sort of agreement. But I reckon that he will be re-signed for another 1 or 2 years. I don't think it'll be beyond that, though. I think it'll be minimum 1, maximum 2. And they'll probably put pen to paper at some point during the year. That would be my prediction of where they would land with Perkins' contract, because he's too good to be delisted, but he's not good enough to get a long-term contract. And he's at that stage of his career at 24 where he would be looking for a long-term contract. This is when you sign the biggest contract of your career. This is around the age, give or take, when Parrish signed a long-term deal. Maybe he was a little bit older. But this is the kind of age where you want to get the most out of football. And I don't think he's shown enough that he can get that real long-term contract. But certainly I think he should be signed for 1 or 2, because he's got enough potential that we see, especially if we become a good team, that he can be the player that we want him to be. So what questions have we got for him? Well, the first question I've got is, can he define his role? All right? Can he define his role? Is it going to be as a midfielder / forward, or is it going to be as a specific forward? So that is a big question for Perkins, and the main one, I think. Can his week-to-week consistency match his talent? He has flashed in and out of games, so we know he can do it. We know we've seen quarters where he plays really well, but very rarely do you see him put a 4-quarter performance together. Can his week-to-week consistency catch up with his talent? And the third question is, which I just addressed earlier, can he get a contract extension? And if so, how much? What should we be doing with him? I don't think he should be traded, but like, everyone's tradable in theory, depending on what someone's offering you, right? So, I mean, the best player in the competition is tradable if someone's going to offer you the deal of a lifetime. So, but realistically, I don't think he's going to be traded. But what kind of contract should he get? 1, 2 years, and what role should he have in the team going forward? So what do you guys think of Archie Perkins? One of the most debated players on our list. He does tend to divide people. He tends to frustrate people a little bit. We see him do good things and we're happy, and then we see him go missing for a while and we get frustrated. And, wouldn't it be great to see him have a breakout year, because he's still young, 20, 23 years old, and he does have that potential. So I'm going to leave it there. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think of Archie Perkins. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And as always, go Bombers!